The Fertile Crescent included Egypt along the Nile, Canaan, or Palestine, then into Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Was this the place where farming and civilization first started? Let's look at the evidence. There were dozens of wild grains and other plants available in the Fertile Crescent. Also present were the ancestors of sheep, goats, pigs, and cattle. Wild horses roamed the Eurasian steppe. With water from the rivers and fertile soil, no wonder farming started here. Thank the inventors and builders for civilization. Tinkerers created stone tools, tamed fire, and invented cooking, designed shelters, all long before farming. Then they invented the tools and techniques that made farming possible. Pots, plowing, harvesting tools, then irrigation and roads. Primitive pots date back to various spots before farming. Pots were needed for food storage, cooking, and eating. The potter's wheel happened 8,000 years ago. The flywheel came later. Pottery could then be made quickly. As a bonus, archaeological sites could be dated based on the pots and pottery shards found. The Neolithic revolution traveled to Mesopotamia at least 12,000 years ago. The earliest conclusive evidence for settled farming was found here, in what became Sumer. Early Sumerian city-states started like Neolithic Jericho, small settlements with wild cereal harvesting, fishing, and hunting. Grains and other plants were domesticated over time, as was livestock. Mesopotamia had the geography and climate stability to maintain growing populations as technology and civilization in general expanded. The result was food surplus, irresistible products like beer and bread, and specialization in culture that featured a ruling class, artisans, and religion. As wealth grew, so did the size of city-states, with palaces, temples, professionals of all kinds, and a peasantry satisfied, or intimidated enough, with their lot to continue. Over time, the Sumerians domesticated livestock, then used oxen for plowing and donkeys for pulling carts. Date palms were used for shade and dates. City-states established sophisticated irrigation systems, including canals and dikes. Invented tools included pickaxes, wagons, and sleds. Dried seeds were stored for the next growing season. Barley paste, porridge, and flatbreads with onions were typical meals for commoners. 50 types of fish were described in Sumer text, and fried fish sellers mentioned from Ur. By 6,000 years ago, about a dozen major Sumerian cities were well established, creating civilization and the beginning of recorded history. The first identified city-state was established by 5400 BCE. Uruk became the biggest city, with perhaps 40 to 80,000 people. Cuneiform writing was developed here. The Bronze Age started about 3300 BCE. Bronze dominated until iron became common a couple of thousand years later. Copper ore was mined in Serbia by 5000 BCE, and traders took copper ore across their trade routes, and copper tools were developed. Bronze was created when tin was added to copper, making a harder and more durable metal. Conveniently, pottery kilns were hot enough to be used for smelting. Bronze tools, cooking utensils, and weapons were vastly superior to stone. This was a time of large trade networks, and bronze became widely available in the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and as far as Nubia in Africa. The early city-states of Sumer seem to have government elections, including elected governors, assemblies of elders, and lower houses of commoners. Military leaders would be appointed during times of war as warfare increased. This eventually led to kings. Religion was important, and the temple head priest became a key leader. City-states developed into caste systems with kings, nobles, and priests, plus palace and temple administrators benefiting the elites. Inner cities were often walled, surrounded by semi-urban areas supporting commoners with bakers, butchers, and craftspeople. Farming and herding were done in the arable areas surrounding the cities. The invention of the wheel for carts meant that farmland could be extended further from the cities. People were roughly divided into four classes: aristocrats, clients that included temple workers, commoners, and slaves. All groups had legal rights, but there was more justice for the higher classes. Sumer became volatile as self-proclaimed god emperors conquered various parts of the region. Consequently, military history overshadowed cultural progress. In total, Sumerian city-states existed for about 4,500 years. The conquest of Sumer by Sargon of Akkad by 2300 BCE meant power moved on to another empire, the fate of most civilizations. The Akkadian Empire would last a couple of hundred years. Akkad's empire would be followed by Babylon, then the Assyrians, then the Hittites, all swept away by the Persians under Cyrus the Great. J.P. Morgan collected cuneiform tablets now in the Yale Babylonian collection. A few tablets had recipes from the Neo-Babylonian period, about 1600 BCE, probably for banquets. The favored foods were roasts and stews. A Yale research team prepared these meals, which will be described when we discuss fabulous feasting. Back to Egypt in the next video, which has taken a backseat to Mesopotamia. The Egyptians started later, but developed their own distinctive civilization different from the Sumerians. It was all about pharaohs and centralized planning, but food remained critical and our major focus on food history and mystery.